Hi, I'm Michael, and welcome to my video blog, Hidden in Plain Sight. Today I'm going to be talking about Quentin Tarantino's new movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, Quentin Tarantino isn't everybody's cup of tea, and not everybody is going to like this. I've heard a lot of people say, it's boring, I don't get it. It's not right. It's not right. Well, it's a Quentin Tarantino movie. If it's going to deal with history, he's going to change it, and he's going to change it. Look at the title, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Once upon a time, fairy tales start with that. It's a story. It's Quentin Tarantino's version of history. Okay, and what I like about it is that it is a character-driven movie. And that is so interesting. Plus the fact that Tarantino, in a way, like Pulp Fiction, has taken all of these little threads and told these little bits and pieces of the story that later on, all of those threads come together and boom, it all comes together and you kind of go, okay. But basically the story is about Rick Dalton, a fading 1950s, 60s television actor whose big claim to fame was a television show called Bounty Law. And now it's February 9th, 1969. That's what the first part of the movie is set in. And it's the story of Rick Dalton, that fading actor who's played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and his stuntman double, buddy, Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt. These guys have a chemistry together that's really great. They get along really well. They play it as a couple of good old boy, drawling kind of guys that like to drink. Basically, they're functional drunks. And the one thing about Pitt, he's always got something. A lot of times in his scenes, if you notice and you start to watch his movies, he's always eating something, which I think is a cool little signature to do. So it tells that story of Dalton and Booth, and in amongst that story, it's all set at a time when Hollywood was changing. It was changing from the old movie studio system to that new, where director is auteur, where the director is the king. You know, in 1969, it was right before Easy Rider came out with Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda, which kind of started that revolution. The year before that, Bonnie and Clyde had come out, which had changed cinema also. So it's how Rick and Cliff navigate that newness, that new system, where the old doesn't work for them anymore, and they've got to figure out how that new system works for them so that they can get ahead or continue on with their careers so they don't just become has-beens. There's some really cool scenes. There's really great cameos in it. One of them that sets up tension early on is when Kurt Russell comes along as stuntman Randy, and Leonardo DiCaprio as Dalton is trying to get Cliff in the door so that he can be used, and he finally talks him into it somehow. You don't exactly see what it was that kind of clinched that, but Randy decides to go ahead and put him in wardrobe and let him hang out, let him get paid for that day. But Randy drops this little thing here that there's this rumor out there that Booth had killed his wife and gotten away with it. And in Randy's term, it brings bad vibe to the set, man. I don't dig him. So there's a flashback to that moment. We're not sure because it doesn't confirm or deny that rumor, and it kind of sets up that tension along the way. Now, I think the first half of the movie is the better part of the movie because it's so character-driven. So at the end of that first part of the movie, during this first part of the movie, Cliff meets Kat. She's a hitchhiker, kind of cute, and he takes her out to Spahn Ranch, which I was really excited to see because that was my very first video on my YouTube channel back in September of last year. in 2018. Um, I'm a big fan of Corriganville. I hike there a lot, and I kind of stumbled onto that set. Like, whoa, what the heck is this? And figured it out rather quickly because of what was, you know, it's all over the news and in all the fan stuff about Tarantino filming Over the Hill. So I figured that out rather quickly. Was all over the set, and the part of the movie that is set at Spahn Ranch was the coolest for me because I walked around that set. I stood on that porch of what was supposed to be George Spahn's house. I walked down those steps that Pitt walked down. So to me, that was friggin' awesome. So the first half of the movie kind of ends with them going to Europe. Dalton gets a chance to make spaghetti westerns, which he goes ahead and takes, even though he's saying, no, that's the bottom of the barrel. So then the movie flash forwards to August 8th, 1969. That's the night of the murders. Those murders happened right after midnight, from August 8th into August 9th, and you see them coming down. Now, the one thing that I didn't mention is that Cliff beats the shit out of Clem at the ranch. And of course, they see that cream-colored Cadillac of Dalton's that Booth is driving around in, doing errands and stuff like that for Rick. So the second half of the movie starts, and they're coming back from Europe. Rick's got himself an Italian wife now. He's got a new style. He's looking like, boom, 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 kind of hippie-ish, not so, old guy looking. He's a little bit more hip now. So Cliff and Rick go out, they party a little bit, they go back to his house. Cliff has a cigarette dipped in an LSD that he had bought from Cat for 50 cents 6 months before. So he's sitting there going, yeah, you know what? What the hell? I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to go for a walk. He takes his pit bull Brandy out for a walk. And who happens to be coming down the street at that time? Yeah, you guessed it. Tex, Katie, and Sadie. So for whatever reason, and I think it's because Rick lives next door to the Tates, even though that Charlie had told them, you don't see it in the film, but you know this from historical context. They told him that he wanted to go to the old Terry Melcher house and take care of the people in there. Whether it was a drug deal or whatever, who knows? It's not mentioned in the film. So instead of breaking into the Sharon Tate house, they happen to break into Rick's house, where Rick is in the pool, chilling out, and Cliff is in there with his extremely well-trained pit bull Brandy. These guys come in, and next thing you know, it's mayhem. Mayhem. I mean, it is, up until this point in the movie, there is no real explicit violence except for like the movie kind of stuff and the TV stuff that was, for the recreations of the TV and movies. This is just plain out bloody ass violence. And it's done in a Quentin Tarantino kind of way. That well-trained pit bull takes care of Tex, takes care of the other one. I mean, it's pretty horrific to get eaten to death, to get mauled by a dog, and then one of the others gets their heads bashed against the fireplace. So instead of the Manson murders happening, basically Charlie and the family are consigned as footnotes to history, never ran, so to speak. And it kind of like, the end kind of leaves it hanging out there like it's a what if kind of a thing. What if they didn't die? That night, the very end of the movie, you have Rick Dalton meeting Jay Sebring and Sharon Tate, and them inviting him in for a drink afterwards. Tarantino leaves it hanging out there. So does Dalton, because of this happening, Does he get to be friends with Polanski? Does he go into a Polanski movie? We don't know. Quentin Tarantino, he just leaves it hanging out there, which I think is pretty cool. Would I give this 4 stars? I'd give it 3. There were parts of it that did disappoint me, but overall, it met and exceeded my expectations. As far as the set went, Tarantino's spared no expense on making it, getting that zeitgeist just right, that feel of the era, that especially with the soundtrack and everything. I mean, it takes me back to when I was 11 years old and listening to AM radio, for God's sake. Like I said, I liked the movie. I think it's in his top 3. If you get a chance, it's worth your time to go ahead and check it out, especially, for the Spahn Ranch set, which I thought was only going to be a teeny tiny little thing in the movie. And it was a small thing in the movie. It wasn't, because the story's not about Manson and the family. It's about Rick and Cliff and their journey and their navigation through that world and into something new. Overall, like I said, I think it's great. 2 thumbs up from me. I appreciate you guys subscribing to my channel and watching my videos. It makes me feel very humble as an old actor and director and moviephile. Thank you again for subscribing and watching. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to be bringing you a whole lot more stuff, hopefully kind of like this. I'm going to do some book and DVD reviews of old movies. I have some things coming up that plans to go to new places. So once again, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you next time. Hidden in Plain Sight.